Well, I've had a chance to talk with Minister Skelly. You've probably seen the item about our expo, but obviously, while I had you here, it would be remiss not to put you onto the spot. And you know, we're talking about the Vision 9, we're talking about the TT branding, all these things that you, and I say you because you are the head of DED, have technically been taking quite a lot of flack about, and you're probably not going to be able to tell me anything more because you're under these business with the AG's department saying you can't say anything about the Vision 9 thing. But I'm asking the question, what can you tell us?
Very little, I'm afraid. We are still, based on advice from the Attorney Generals, under sub judice with regards to the position with Vision 9, and it will remain that way until conclusion is and that advice has been given to us. Looking
back on the interview that I got with you, you're busy lectioneering, I tracked you down that day, and it's still that thing that you were hoping, and this isn't probably doing anything to anybody, so it shouldn't be a worry, but you were still very hopeful at that stage.
Yes. I mean, what we do, of course, economic development, TT sits there, and I think it's well worth recognising that what we try and do is look at opportunities to, shall we say, maximise the economic benefit. There's no doubt about it. The TT is an extremely strong brand, and the fact it was registered all those years ago, I think was very prudent because it is such a strong brand. And what we've tried to do is in economic development to say, how do we develop that? How do we take that further, and how do we get more bang for our buck and give a greater benefit to the taxpayer? Because for years and years it's been a big cost burden, but that has gradually been coming down because of the growth of the event and how we've intended to sort of commercialise it in a greater fashion.
The World Series didn't happen, but that cost you to go down that route. This thing potentially, if there is any legal action at some point happening, will cost you. I mean, do you see this as a disaster? Mishandling or mismanagement or what? Well,
no, I think this is about exploring all these options, and the World Series was something that was on the desk when I arrived there as a minister. Several £100,000 had already been spent, and there's a question to be answered. And when you spend that sort of money, you and the evidence says you need to ask that question. That's what we did.
Did you pull the plug on that, or was it that sort of keep spending or stop now? Did you have to make that decision?
Well, it did require a further spend, but to come to the conclusion that we did, and that was in the first tender process. And yes, I think the strength of the brand is very, very clearly evidenced, particularly in that feasibility study, to say, what, we have a very strong brand, can we get more out of it? And the answer to that is probably yes, but what we do need to do is to focus clearly on the local event.
This year's TT will run exactly on the same media partners, the same sponsors, the same way of everything. I mean, is that it? There's no change for anybody. It's steady as she goes, and for the foreseeable future. I mean, are you putting people on a new contract? Maybe that's just word it that way, or are you doing it year by year until you sort this thing out?
Well, we have been doing it year by year for the last 2 years. Now we come to that sort of conclusion. We will obviously look for longevity. So, and I think your average man in the street and your TT fan, etc., will not see any difference. And and that was the whole point. Really, was they won't see any difference. They'll come to the event, they'll experience the festival, etc., and they'll hopefully go away enjoying the event. And we've had a successful event. And again, pointing out, we regard success, and I always do like to point this out. Success is a safe TT first and foremost, because it is an extremely dangerous event, especially as a government promoting it. So we take safety very, very seriously, and also an economic success as well, which is the other point.
You take safety seriously. If you took it seriously, you couldn't run the TT, could you? I mean, let's face it. If you went to the health and safety people,
undoubtedly, and I can recall several years ago being interviewed by a Japanese TV crew saying the same thing. How do we, as a government, promote an event that does what it does? And we've had Japanese competitors that lose their lives, very sadly, as many others have been, and that is very difficult to understand that. But in many ways, the answer I gave, which is off the hoof, is that the TT is a bit like a samurai. He's a TT rider is like a warrior. He's a man and machine testing to the limit, and it's part of our history, it's part of our heritage, it's part of our DNA, and that's why the TT and the Isle of Man brand is so strong. It's over 100 years going, and I think we've hopefully got more to get out of it.
Journalists who come here for the first time, and I've met a few, cannot get their head around the fact that if someone dies in a race, 2 hours later, the next race goes on. I mean, in other sports, the whole thing's cancelled. You know, there's a cloud of it. Here, it is a completely strange feel, isn't it? Because we're used to it. Do you accept that? And it's
it is, again, as part of our DNA, if you like. But what you should recognise there, Paul, is that there's an army, particularly of volunteers, that actually do help and support it. Some of the welfare work that goes on behind the scenes. You know, we talk about the marshals and the work they do, fantastic. You know, then you talk about all the other people that do actually assist and, you know, make the smooth operation of these things happen. It doesn't just get swept under the carpet. They're dealt with very, very sympathetically, and but the show does go on. Yes.
Well, the only way, actually, people might not even notice this, but if there's no champagne on the winners' top three, something bad's happened, and that's probably the only signal, the difference. But anyway,
it is.
Can the government keep doing this? Are you still wanting this to go to a private sort of group person, whatever, to run it, so you are removed from running the TT?
Well, the point to make there is two things, really. Number one, do we want to promote more economic benefit? Yes, we will always look at ways to do that. How we achieve it will remain to be seen at this point. But we will always be seeking opportunities to maximise it. Secondly, will the event continue? Yes, I would hope it will do. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, in this post, I will do everything I can to maintain it. But it's worth recognising the disruption TT brings. You know, there's a whole other population here on the Isle of Man that understands and respects the TT and for what it actually is, and I think it was much more understood and recognised and respected when we did the economic benefit analysis, which was a few years ago. Said this is what it means to the Isle of Man. It is a lot of disruption, it does cost money, but it does bring in all this money. Which
brings me quickly then to the point about the cycle racing. I mean, this news is also great news, but it will bring more disruption, but you've got to balance this out. It's costing you money to put on. You have to pitch money for that. You want to tell us how much?
Yeah, I think it's published actually. It's just over 100,000 is what it is. But you know, that was we started this. I think it was about 4 years ago. I think when I called a meeting of stakeholders, and I remember when we looked at it. I think it was in the run up to the Olympics where one of our lads did win a goal, which is fantastic. And the whole idea there was that there's a momentum here on another form of two wheels, and we said, well, how do we maximise this? How can we get more out of this in terms of not just as a support and great recreation and recognition, for our young people there making a career out of it, but let's bring cycling home, and that was part of that.
And we did an interview in Glasgow. You didn't get it that time round, but this one, it's yours. Is this going to be a regular thing?
Well, we hope we can build on that. It's a massive profile event for us.
How many people do you expect to bring over?
Well, we don't know. I mean, conservatively, it'll be in the low thousands, but it will be, quite a few thousand. But it'll be the exposure that will bring beyond that. I think that will be very important.
People who stay in hotels, all the teams need to stay in nice places. We're not overly full of, got all those camping and all that. That's not their thing, is it? Or is it?
Well, it'll be a mixture, and that was, in many ways, if you see what we have going on, really, and these are both tourism-related events. Events we do very well. There's no doubt about that, and this is another one which we can now sort of hang a hat on, which is fantastic, really. But tourism is enjoying a renaissance. There's no doubt about that. We're seeing growth year on year in these last few years in tourism. Sustainable growth. I can tell you we've got many multi-million pounds worth of investment looking at the tourism, and this is actually investment from local investors, I might add, as well as people off island, that we will hopefully continue this resurgence in tourism and, as I say, be a wider economic.
So many things thinking about, but quickly, the TT business about Bushies. Mr. Collister came forward. You were off Ireland, and he did all the interviews, and that was great. But how do you view this? Was it something that just shouldn't have happened in the first place?
Well, it could have been handled a bit differently. Yes, in hindsight, that's easy to say. The principle behind it goes back to about 10 plus, I think nearly 10 years ago, when they registered the trade name, and that's what's important. And very clearly, there's a value attached to that, and protecting the brand is important. And I'm sure Martin would recognise that, as well as everyone would.
It was just that threat, wasn't it? I mean, it was probably
Well, it did sort of gather a pace, shall we say, and just observing us, from afar and social media, etc. It really did.
That's your officers who do that, right? I mean, it's very good that Mr. Collister coming forward, but in fact, it's actually your officers who do that sort of thing. He doesn't write those letters.
Yeah, no.
Well, you don't write those letters either. So.
I think there was a principle there about protecting the brand. It could have been handled past a little bit different, but and that's what we need to do. And we do have situations. A lot of people are asking, about other forms of how to use that letter, those letters and promote it, because if people do pay a license, then it does contribute to the benefit of the event and the running of the event.
Finally, are you happy where you are? Are you going to stay where you are? Do you feel that you will be here for the 5 years, or is this a poison chalice now that you are just in the firing line all the time? I mean, cleverly, and it seems that way, the Chief Minister kept you in DD. Was it your choice to stay in DD? Were you asked if you wanted to move or anything?
No, I was asked to do the role, and I'm more than happy to do the role. And obviously, haven't started where I did start, and it was, I think, beneficial and opportunistic, really, to go back and try and finish through. Do
you want to stay
lot of these. I'm very happy to stay in this position.
Would you like to move?
No, I'm very content. To be quite frank, I'm very honoured, pleased, and I've got a fantastic team. That we're working with. We have obviously there's a whole new intake with regards to political members, which is why we're sort of trying to have a review and look at refocusing DED, because we need to ensure we're not just fit for purpose but fit for the future. We talked earlier about strategy changing, the Vision 2020. We need to be able to adapt much more quicker. Our economy's changing at a rapid pace. Industries are changing through all sorts of disruptions in their industries, and we as a government, and particularly as a department here, we need to be ready to adapt. So am I happy and pleased to stay in it? Absolutely, I am.
You'll be there for 5 years?
Well, hey, a week in politics, you never know, Paul. So I didn't last very long. I think it was DOI Minister for a couple of months, But that's how it is. You've got to be ready to change. But I'm very, very committed to seeing through jobs, And go back to the cycling. 4 years ago, I called a meeting of stakeholders, and it's great to see that's come to full fruition. And we have a host of other things that we're working on. Just this week, we were awarded the award for our aircraft registry, the best in the world. Fantastic. That's part of the team that we have at DED.